have now come to the most important phase in the history of the Mauryas, the period of the reign of the third ruler of this dynasty, namely the reign of Ashoka. Indeed, the most important and the most famous ruler of this dynasty, whose reign of nearly 40 years is not only the most significant period in Mauryan history, but he is undoubtedly one of the most celebrated political figures in Indian history, who has left behind enormous influence on Indian history. One of the major advantages of studying the reign period of Ashoka is the availability of a large number of his lithic records, the inscriptions which Ashoka himself caused to be engraved on durable, imperishable surfaces of different types of rocks and pillars. Apart from the inscriptions, Ashoka is a celebrated figure in a variety of Buddhist texts, because it is well known that he took to Buddhism at a particular point of his life. Therefore, he figures very prominently in later Buddhist texts like the Divyavadana, like the Ashokavadana, and he is also figuring in the Sri Lankan Buddhist texts, the Mahavamsa and the Dipavamsa. It is true that the Buddhist texts, both in India, in Sri Lanka, are later in date than the actual period of his reign. That's why we have to concentrate primarily on Ashoka's inscription, where the emperor speaks in first person to his subjects, to his officers. We do not know in details about Ashoka's early life. It is understandable that he succeeded his father Bindusara, the second ruler of the Maurya dynasty, around 273 BC, a date which can be calculated as the date of his accession by studying the Sri Lankan Buddhist texts. Yet, it is also clearly known that Ashoka recorded that his coronation, Abhisheka, took place 4 years after he actually ascended the throne, that is in 269 BC. Why was there such a gap of 4 years between his actual accession to the throne and his formal consecration or coronation is not ascertainable. If we believe the Buddhist texts, the story is there was a struggle for power, a rivalry to ascend the throne. Ashoka was involved in this fratricidal struggle. He massacred, according to the Buddhist text, 100 of his brothers and then ascended the throne. Therefore, the period of 4 years of intense struggle and the delay in the consecration. However, the Buddhist texts try to portray Ashoka before his conversion to Buddhism as cruel Ashoka, Chandashoka, and after the conversion he, as it were, became the pious Ashoka, Dharmashoka. The point is, the Buddhist texts obviously try to portray the transformative character of Buddhism as a religion that could completely change the character of the ruler. First of all, the texts are later in date than the period of Ashoka, and very clearly there is a particular bias. The bias is to impress upon the transformative character of a great religion. The point is, in his own inscriptions, Ashoka never speaks of any such rivalry for the capture of power, and definitely there is no mention of the massacre of brothers. In fact, in his own inscriptions, he instructs his officials to look after and care for the households, olodhana, that is avarodhana, of his brothers. Now, despite considerable amount of ancient data, there are discrepancies among the sources, which sometimes is a challenging task for a historian and the student of history to understand Ashoka's reign. With him begins the tradition of inscribing words on stone or any other kind of imperishable materials. Ashoka's inscriptions are strewn over a very wide area of the subcontinent. These are of 8 types. The first category is called rock edicts or major rock edicts, 14 in number. Why these are called major rock edicts? Because these are inscribed on rocks or boulders, and these are long statements. That's why called rock edicts or major rock edicts. One edict is separated from another edict by drawing a horizontal line where one edict ends and another edict begins. That is done consciously under the instruction of Ashoka. There are 2 minor rock edicts. Why minor? Because like the major rock edicts, these are also inscribed on rock surfaces or boulders, but the edicts are smaller. That's why these are called minor rock edicts, once again strewn over a very wide area. Similarly, there are 7 pillar edicts, that is the inscriptions which were engraved on the famous Mauryan pillars. Once again, horizontal lines were used to demarcate one edict from another edict. Here too, the statements engraved on the surface of the pillar are pretty long. That's why called either simply pillar edicts or sometimes to be understood as major pillar edicts. There are also similar minor pillar edicts where the inscriptions engraved on the pillar are smaller in size. That's why these are called minor pillar edicts. And then there are a few minor pillar inscriptions different from minor pillar edicts. We shall come to this point, what is the difference between an edict and inscriptions, very soon. Then we have a particular, only one such edict came from Bairat, that is in Rajasthan. There are 2 types of rock edicts which are found only in Kalinga or present day Orissa, one coming from Dholi, which is close to Bhubaneswar, and the second is from Jaugada, which is in the Ganjam district of Orissa. Since these 2 types of rock edicts are normally not seen outside Orissa, these are called separate rock edict or Kalinga rock edict. Then there are inscriptions which are located in Gaya region on the cave shelters at the Barabar rocks near the Nagarjuna hills near Gaya. These are the sets of Ashoka's inscriptions. Along with that, we may also include 2 inscriptions, one coming from Mahasthan, now included in northern part of Bangladesh. Mahasthan itself is a very major excavated site. There is also more or less a similar inscription from Sagoda in close to the Gorakhpur area of present day Uttar Pradesh. All these inscriptions are written in Prakrit language and in Brahmi and Kharoshti script. Please note here that Ashoka did not use Sanskrit as the choice of his language. He uses Prakrit of different types in his inscription instead of Sanskrit. The two scripts employed are the earliest known instances of any Indian script: Brahmi, which is the mother of all ancient Indian scripts, which is written from left to right, and Kharoshti, which is written in the other direction from right to left. Kharoshti script is mainly used in the inscriptions found in the northwestern part of the subcontinent, while inscriptions written in Brahmi script are found over the greater parts of the mainland of India. Till 1984, by Ashokan inscriptions, we always understood inscriptions written in Prakrit language and engraved in Brahmi and Kharoshti scripts. In 1984, the publication of a book, Studies in the Aramaic Edicts of Ashoka by Professor B.N. Mukherjee, revealed a completely new world to us, and we come to know that Ashoka caused to be engraved as many as 7 inscriptions from Taxila and from different parts of Afghanistan, written in 2 non-Indian languages and non-Indian scripts. The 2 languages are Greek language and use of Greek script. The other is Aramaic language and Aramaic script. Aramaic is actually one of the most popular languages and scripts current in West Asia and written like Kharoshti from right to left. In general, Ashoka would call himself these inscriptions as Dhamma Lipi. Inscriptions are something engraved for the propagation of Dhamma or his idea of piety. I have repeatedly used the word edict. The term edict means promulgation of certain instructions, almost like law, like present day ordinances. Most of the inscriptions emanating from the mouth of Ashoka are royal proclamations, promulgations, issuing new directives. That's why the term edict is preferable than any ordinary inscriptions. There are 2 or 3 records in which Ashoka does not issue any new instruction but records certain events. That's why in the case of there are 3 minor pillar inscriptions instead of being called pillar edicts. This crucial difference is to be kept in mind. Ashoka in his inscriptions appears as Devanam Piya Piyadasi Raja, that is the king who is Devanam Piya, beloved of the gods, and Priyadarshi, one of beautiful look. Interestingly, in the Greek and Aramaic records, there is either a very correct transliteration of these Prakrit terms or correct translation of these Prakrit words. Like Ashoka's epithet Priyadarshi is figuring in his Greek edicts as Piodases, an exact transliteration, and in Aramaic it becomes Pridarsh, a very close Aramaic transliteration. Ashoka's political epithet Raja becomes in Greek Basileos, exact translation of the word Raja in Greek, and in Aramaic it takes the form Malka, that is what even we nowadays call Malik, the Lord. We are lucky that only in a handful number of his inscriptions his personal name appears. First it was found in Maski in Karnataka, later it was found from Gujara in Madhya Pradesh, also it came from Nittur and Udegulam, the last 2 also found from Karnataka, where it is Devanam Piya Piyadasi Raja Ashoka, where the name Ashoka categorically figures, and that's why you know that who this Devanam Piyadasi, beloved of the god, a beautiful look, who is this king? He is none but Ashoka himself. In the sculptures of the Mauryan period, most of which belong to the time of Ashoka, there is no portrayal of the figure of the ruler. So we do not really know how he looked like. However, in very recent times, a 3rd century AD sculpture has come from Karnataka, Kaganahalli, a sculpture as you can see in the photograph here. The figure of a royal person, his appearance is very clearly marked as that of an exalted person, a person of authority. There is an umbrella above his head, someone holds a parasol over his head, he stands in a dignified posture, and along with the sculpture there is a label inscription which reads, the figure of King Ashoka. It is indeed a later figure, but at least now we have something to tell how, in the view of an artist of perhaps 2nd or 3rd century AD, Ashoka could have looked like. Now, if we proceed a little bit further on Ashoka's time, the term Devanampiya, beloved of the god, beloved of the gods, Ashoka says in at least one place that his predecessors also bore the title Devanampiya. The possibility gains ground if we look at an inscription of one of his successors, Dasharatha, who also uses the term Devanampiya. So, Devanampiya could have actually been a dynastic epithet of the Mauryan rulers. No less interesting is the point that the Mauryan ruler uses a very simple political epithet. Distinct from his dynastic name, the political epithet is Raja or Basileus or Malka. We would now like to turn to perhaps the most important political event during the time of Ashoka. In his Rock Edict 13, Ashoka himself says that when 8 years have elapsed since his coronation, that is, if his coronation took place at 269 BC, in 261 BC, in our calculation, Ashoka conquered Kalinga and annexed it after defeating Kalinga. Rock Edict 13 gives a vivid description of the massacre that was perpetrated in this Kalinga war. The terrible massacre at Kalinga, even if this was a victorious war, left a very deep impact in the emperor's mind. He himself says in the edict that he was full of remorse at having unleashed this terrible misery during the course of war and victory. Kalinga was indeed annexed, but this was a turning point in Ashoka's personal career, this was a turning point in Maurya history. Ashoka gave up war for good. Filled with remorse, Ashoka not only gave up the policy of aggressive wars and conquest and annexation, but possibly at this point was converted to Buddhism. He also says that when unconquered area Avijita is conquered, such terrible events of forcible carrying away of people, killing of life and death take place. Is it a kind of a justification he's giving for his massacre? If Ashoka is deeply perturbed and there is absolutely no ground to doubt the genuineness of his remorse, this passage, often missed by students and historians, one has to take into account also the fact that Ashoka describes Kalinga as an unconquered area or Vijita territory. So, with the conquest of Kalinga, it is annexed and the Mauryan Empire reaches its maximum expansion. Before we encounter how really large it was, we are also indebted to Ashoka for letting us know a number of designations he used to denote his own realm. In at least 4 rock edicts, he uses the term to denote his realm as Vijita, meaning conquered area. The realm is also called Raja Vishaya, royal domain. If we put the two terms together, then Ashoka gives an impression that the Mauryan realm is a conquered territory, Vijita Raja Vishaya. In another inscription, Ashoka states about the fruits of his exertions, pakama or prakrama, over Jambudvipa. That is his realm, because he can exert only over the area in which he has his jurisdiction. So, Jambudvipa, which in Puranas is pretty well known, actually appears for the first time in Ashoka's inscription in the sense of the Maurya Empire, not Jambudvipa as a mythical land, not Jambudvipa as the entire subcontinent along with some areas in the Southeast Asian territories. He also uses in one inscription from Nittur the term Pathivi or Prithivi to denote his realm. The term Pathivi or Prithivi definitely means the earth, but Ashoka does not use the term here in the sense of earth. Obviously, he was not the ruler of the entire world. The term Prithivi figures in Kautilya Arthashastra as the arena of the Chakravarti universal ruler, obviously meaning Prithivi here in the sense of the country, that is the subcontinent. In Rock Edict 14, he shows his awareness that the realm is large. He says, Mahalake Vijitam, my realm is very expansive. We get for the first time 4 designations of his realm. First, Vijita. Second, the term Rajavishaya, royal domain. Third, Jambudvipa. Fourth, Prithivi, which is equivalent to the subcontinent. How large it was. The best way to determine the extent of Ashoka's empire, which marks the maximum expansion of the Mauryan power, is offered by his own inscriptions. If we look at the map, we can see the distribution of the fine spots of his records. Interestingly, only the far south, that is the area to the south of present-day Karnataka, has not yielded any Ashoka's inscription. To the east of northern part of undivided Bengal, no Ashoka's record are seen. If we now look at the contents of these inscriptions, Ashoka speaks of a number of people residing within his Vijita or Raja Vishaya. If the realm is called Vijita, the areas outside his realm are called Avijita, Antya, Prachanta, that is unconquered territories beyond his realm, beyond the frontier of his realm. Interestingly, not a single record of Ashoka is found from these areas which are clearly marked as unconquered territories. There are 5 Greek rulers with clear known dates who were contemporaries of Ashoka. So, their dates can at least give us a reliable indication about the date bracket of Ashoka. The Mauryan realm stretches in the north from Afghanistan to Karnataka, or at least northern part of Karnataka in the south, and from Kathiawar in the west to Kalinga in the east, if not also including at least northern part of Bengal. It is a very large territory. No other power in ancient India ever carved out a larger territory than the Mauryas. This mighty and vast empire collapsed rather dramatically very soon after the death of Ashoka. Ashoka's reign comes to an end about 232 BC. It appears that Mauryan Empire collapsed in 187 BC, that is, in less than half a century since Ashoka's death. We shall explore later the causes of this sudden collapse of this mighty Maurya powers. But up to this point, the gradual building up of this expansion of Maurya power, since its foundation to its climax during the time of Ashoka, can be charted out in this way. However, we would like to explore, can it be called an empire? And we would like to see, in the light of the statecraft of the Maurya period and the expansion of the Mauryan realm, how the label empire can be applied in this case.